Live from Vermont Public Television, it's Report from Washington. Tonight, Senator Bernie Sanders answers your questions and discusses the day's top issues and how they'll affect us in Vermont. As always, you can call our toll-free line or email us at connect@vpt.org. Your questions help drive the discussion. Here's Mark Johnson.
Good evening and welcome to Report from Washington. I am Mark Johnson. As you heard tonight, our guest is Senator Bernie Sanders. This really is a golden opportunity for you to talk to our congressional delegation. We very much encourage your phone calls. You'll see the number on the screen, and you can also reach us via email. In addition, we'll be giving the senator's contact information to you throughout the program. In case you can't reach us tonight, he too would very much like to hear from you. Senator Sanders joins us tonight from Washington, D.C. We generally on our broadcast have a short delay in our signal back from Washington that may appear to you during the course of the broadcast. Senator, let me start tonight with a story that we're following here in Vermont. I know one you've been following down there. A decision is expected really any day now from the military on whether or not they're going to follow through and locate the F-35 fighter jet here in South Burlington. What are you hearing?
Not any more than you are. We expect the decision within the next several weeks, and we'll see what happens.
You support this locating here. Do you have any ambivalence? You've been a strong critic of big military budgets. Do you have any ambivalence about this, given the billions in cost overruns?
Yeah, there are a couple of issues here, and number one is, have there been overruns with the F-35? The answer is yes. Does the Department of Defense in general have a whole lot of waste in it? It certainly does. They can't even do an audit of their $600 billion a year budget. Those are all very important issues, which, in fact, we're looking at the Department of Defense reauthorization coming up, and I'll be active on those issues. But to me, there are a few simple questions in terms of the F-35. Number one, if the F-35 does not come to the state of Vermont, it's not going to disappear. You know where it goes? It goes to Florida. It goes to South Carolina. And if that happens, it is possible, and nobody knows the future, and I don't want to get anybody nervous, but it is possible that the significant mission of the Vermont National Guard becomes diminished, and we lose jobs. We lose educational opportunities for the people at the Vermont National Guard. We lose economic activity in the state of Vermont. So the question is not whether we have the F-35 or not. It is here. It is NATO's planes. It's the Air Force's planes. It is going to be the cutting-edge fighter jet for the United States military. If it does not come to Vermont, it goes elsewhere. I would rather it come to Vermont. Now, what my concern is I think there is a legitimate concern about noise. And we are working, the entire delegation is working with the Vermont National Guard, and those guys have historically been very, very good neighbors. They've tried to reach out to the community. And the goal is to do everything that we can to diminish the noise problem. That is a legitimate issue. But if people talk about the military budget, and they talk about all these other things, it doesn't really relate to the issue in Vermont. The F-35 is here. It is going to be the fighter jet of the United States Air Force, of NATO. If it doesn't come to Vermont, it goes elsewhere.
Will the opposition here in Vermont have any impact on the military?
I don't know. You have to ask them. They have to make a strategic decision. I think they do pay attention to the opposition. Look, on this issue, Mark, there's no question. There are people who are strongly opposed to the F-35. There are people who are strongly for it. We have heard a lot from both sides. I can't tell you, which side has more supporters. But that is my view. My view is that the F-35 is here. I am proud of the work done by the Vermont National Guard. I do not want to see their mission diminished. I do not want to see the possibility of hundreds of jobs being lost. That's my view.
The president today continuing to address the issue of health care reform, Obamacare, and the rollout of the federal website, apologizing today to consumers, saying he'd been wrong on a couple of issues and that there were inexcusable delays. We're going to run a short clip of him talking about it, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
And I'm sure that given the problems with the website so far, They're going to be looking to go after it even harder. And let's admit it, with the website not working as well as it needs to work, that makes a lot of supporters nervous because they know how it's been subject to so much attack, the Affordable Care Act generally. But I just want to remind everybody, we did not wage this long and contentious battle just around a website. That's not what this was about.
Is this giving the president's opponents the opening that they're looking for, Bernie?
Look, Mark, there is a huge amount of politics surrounding this issue. As everybody knows, our right-wing friends in the House of Representatives, Republicans, shut down the government, threatened not to pay our bills for the first time in the history of this country because they wanted to defund the Affordable Care Act. So it is a very politically contentious issue. I think, though, we have to focus on what's really important. And what's really important is that today in America, we've got 48 million Americans who have no health insurance. Many others are paying deductibles, have deductibles which are much, much too high, paying too much for premiums, too much in co-payments. We lose about 45,000 people every single year, Mark, because they don't get to the doctor on time. And after all of that stuff, we end up spending almost twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country, all of whom have universal health care for their people, and in many cases better health care outcomes than we do. Now, in my mind, I voted for the Affordable Care Act for a number of reasons. It is not my choice of the kind of health care system that we should have. I believe in a Medicare for all single-payer system, which looks at health care as a right. At the end of the day, for Obamacare, you're going to still have 28 million people with no health insurance. So I believe in universal health care, a Medicare for all single-payer system, which will be much more cost-effective and provide health care to all people. Now, if you look at the Affordable Care Act, I think it is much too complicated. Clearly, there is no defense for what's happened to the website. But on the other hand, we have to look at also the fact that 20 million more Americans are going to get health insurance. That's not insignificant, Mark. We have to look at the fact that we have done away with this obscenity of pre-existing conditions. So that somebody has breast cancer or has diabetes, they couldn't even get coverage. Kids 26 or under will now be able to be on their parents' insurance. There will no longer be a limit to the amount of coverage that benefits that you can receive in a given year. So this is a modest effort based on, by the way, what Mitt Romney did in Massachusetts. This is not a huge deal. It is a modest effort. We've got to go further. And let me just say this. I was on the line. I wasn't sure whether I was going to vote for it. What made me end up voting for the Affordable Care Act was, as you will remember, I managed to get $11 billion for community health centers throughout this country. Just today, as part of the Affordable Care Act, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that Vermont will get 3 more federally qualified health centers in Addison County, in Orange County, and down in Bennington County. 33,000 more Vermonters will be able to access good quality primary health care, dental care, mental health counseling, and the lowest cost prescription drugs available in America. That's on top of the 8 we already have. So the Affordable Care Act has provided millions of Americans, including many more people in Vermont, access to good quality primary health care through a huge expansion of community health center program.
Alice Seymour in Virgins asked in an email whether or not you regret voting in favor of Obamacare and wish that you'd pushed harder for a single-payer system.
Well, I pushed as hard as I could. And I should tell you that when I introduced the bill, a senator literally demanded the reading of the entire bill, which would have been 8 or 10 hours, and I had to withdraw it. I am a strong single-payer advocate. If the bill had come to the floor, we would have gotten 7 or 8 supporters. That's what we would have gotten. So we are not anywhere near where we should be in terms of the Congress supporting a single-payer program. On the other hand, what I hope very, very much is that our small state, now that we have a strong network of primary health care facilities, we have very, very good doctors and nurses and healthcare administrators in the state. You know, when people come to Vermont, they don't come to make a whole lot of money. They come because of a mission. They believe in providing healthcare to people. So we have some great hospitals. We can lead the nation, and I hope we will, moving toward a very different system, taking the healthcare burden off of small and medium-sized businesses, making healthcare a right of all people, providing healthcare to all people in a cost-effective way through a single-payer program. That's what I expect will be the direction that single-payer will go through the states. I hope that Vermont leads that effort.
What are you hearing back in Washington about what's happening here in Vermont with the rollout of the health exchange here, Bernie?
Well, not a whole lot. I mean, you know, most people are focusing on what's going on with the national healthcare website. Obviously, Vermont is having its own share of problems.
Let's. Monday is Veterans Day. I know you're the head of the Veterans Committee. What do you say to veterans here, Veterans Day 2013?
What I say is, for a start, we are deeply indebted, all of us, every American is, for the service of the men and women who have put on the uniform to defend our country. What I also say is that I am, as chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, more than aware that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young men and women, including many in Vermont, came back from Iraq and Afghanistan with post-traumatic stress disorder, with traumatic brain injury, and we are working as hard as we can on this very, very difficult issue. What I would also say is that in the state of Vermont, I'm proud to say that we're making some really good success, Mark, in expanding health care to Vermont veterans. Just a few weeks ago, a brand new facility was opened in Burlington, a new, what we call CBOC, community-based outreach clinic in the old General Electric building on Lakeside Avenue. It's a beautiful facility, and I hope veterans in the Chittenden County area access that. We've constructed a new clinic in Brattleboro a few years ago, and one more recently in Newport. A new one was built a couple of years ago in Rutland. We're making some good improvements in White River Junction. So bottom line here is we owe a debt of gratitude to veterans that is unpayable. You can't pay it back for what many of them have gone through. My job as chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee is to make sure that every veteran in this country gets all of the benefits and health care that they have been promised, and we intend to do that. Have
the problems that we heard about at Walter Reed Hospital been fixed?
Walter Reed has moved into a brand new facility in Bethesda, Maryland. I was there a couple of months ago. It is an outstanding facility.
But the problems have been taken care of? The backlog, people not being able to get in?
Well, that's a different issue. That's a Department of Defense facility, not a VA facility. In terms of the backlog, which remains a very serious problem, the issue was that for whatever reason, I can't even begin to tell you why, but for many, many years, while the whole world was going from paper to digital, the Veterans Administration was staying with paper. And when Eric Shinseki became Secretary of the VA under Obama, he began the process of transforming the system. And what we have seen in the last few months, some really good progress in cutting back the amount of time it takes to process claims. What General Shinseki has said is that by the end of 2015, every claim brought forth by a veteran will be processed within 125 days with 98% accuracy, and that's the goal we're shooting for. We are beginning to make some progress in dealing with the claim backlog.
I want to talk a little bit about the National Security Agency and some of the spying that's been going on, but first we're going to take a related call. We'll go to Charlotte. Lawrence, good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Go ahead. You have a question?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Sanders for the stances he takes in the Senate on most activities. I won't ask him if he'd be willing to run for president, but I am a veteran, and I'd like to direct a question about the military use of drones in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
All right.
Major problem I see is that it is being used by the CIA. The CIA is totally unaccountable.
All right.
And this is making us more enemies than friends. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, and our stance is they should be banned from using military drones in these countries or any other countries. I'm wondering if Senator Sanders would support such a piece of legislation.
All right, thanks for your call.
No, I wouldn't. Thanks very much for your call, and you make some very important points. And let me give you the broader perspective from where I'm coming from. I worry very much that our intelligence agencies, especially the NSA, is out of control. And I strongly disagree with this idea that every telephone call made in the United States of America should be kept on file by the NSA. I have reason to believe that they are getting into people's emails in a way that they should not be doing, getting on to the websites that people are visiting that they should not be doing. It has been a huge international embarrassment, which has really hurt us all over this world. When it became public that the United States was tapping the phone of Chancellor Merkel in Germany and other leaders around the world, that is not the way you develop international cooperation so that we can address as a planet, as an international community, the serious problems we face. So I think we have to take a very hard look at the activities of the NSA and the CIA and other intelligence agencies. Clearly, terrorism is a serious issue. There are people today who are plotting on how they can harm Americans, and we've got to do everything we can to defend ourselves from them. But you can do it within the framework of the United States Constitution and not give just a blank check, so to speak, to some of these intelligence agencies. So this is an issue I feel strongly about. I have been active about it. I voted against the USA Patriot Act when it first came out. Not so many people did that. I voted against its reauthorization, and we're going to work to make some significant changes so that while we protect the American people against terrorism, we do not violate basic constitutional rights.
Were all of these revelations that have come out from Edward Snowden and everybody else completely new to you?
Yes and no. Not all of the revelations were not new to me. Some of them were.
Okay. Can you give me an example of one that you already knew about?
Well, we knew about, in general, one of the concerns that I've always had with the USA Patriot Act is you didn't have just cause. In other words, it wasn't the question of a law enforcement agency going into the FISA court and saying, look, I have reason to believe that A, B, and C are involved in terrorist activity. What we knew is the FISA court was giving a much broader response and allowing the intelligence agencies to have much more leeway than they should. That I certainly knew. Did I know that the United States was keeping files on every phone call made in America? No, I did not.
Do you think you're in the majority or in the minority in the United States Senate in wanting to rein in the NSA?
Good question. And on this one, it's interesting. Some of my right-wing friends share the same concern. And honest conservatives who tell us how much they dislike big government should be leading the effort to say that we should not be spying on the American people and we should not be invading the privacy of millions of people. So I think you're going to see some strange bedfellows, Mark, coming together from the right and the left working on that. Whether we are a majority or not, I don't know. Senator Leahy is chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is working on a fairly ambitious piece of legislation. We will see what kind of support that gets. The bill that came out of the Intelligence Committee is much too weak for me to support.
Okay. So what are you looking for? What has to be in it?
What has to be in it is an understanding that we cannot give broad leeway to the NSA and other intelligence agencies to do virtually anything they want in the name of national security. Spying on the Chancellor of Germany does not help us in the fight against terrorism. It, in fact, has hurt us because our credibility around the world with other countries is damaged. So I think what we want is a very clear definition of what these intelligence agencies can do. Terrorism is a real issue. I want them to be able to fight terrorism, but they just cannot have that broad leeway that they now have to invade the privacy of millions and millions of people. And by the way, this is not just an issue of intelligence agencies and the government. I worry very much about corporate America and what a lot of the private sector is doing in bringing forth and harboring information on the American people. I mean, the average company out there knows what you're reading, what you're buying, where you're going, where you're traveling. I worry about that. If we're a free society, I don't think we want corporate America. I don't think we want the United States government to know every last thing about us. We should be able to have a little bit of freedom and a little bit of privacy to live our lives and make our decisions without Big Brother watching us.
Do you think Edward Snowden's revelations have been hurtful or helpful?
I think by and large they have been helpful. I think it has brought forth a lot of discussion, not just in the United States of America, but all over the world. Again, look, the issue is terrorism is real, and I believe we have got to be as aggressive as we can in addressing dangers facing the United States and our allies around the world. They are real. But I think we have got to do it in a smarter way, in a way that understands that in a free society, you know, that's what America's supposed to be, a free society, you can make a phone call without the government knowing who you're calling.
Do you think you've ever had a phone that's been tapped?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, Mark.
Okay, all right.
I think the fact that you're asking that question, and that many people wonder, are members of Congress getting their phone tapped? I can't give you a definitive no on that. I mean, I wish I could say, don't be ridiculous. That's a crazy idea. I can't say that. Now, that doesn't mean to say that members of Congress are getting their phones tapped. But, you know, these are the kinds of concerns that some of us have.
Back on health care, Brad Weber asks, how would you finance a single-payer health care system?
Probably through a payroll tax, or generally speaking, a progressive tax. The issue, but let's be clear here. The United States does health care in a much different way than every other major country on earth. For every other major country, whether it's just north of us in Canada, whether it's the UK, Scandinavia, Germany, there are two propositions that are out there. Number one, they all believe that healthcare is a right. You know, we believe that education, you know, kids have a right to go to elementary school, to go to high school. It is a right. Every other major country on earth believes that healthcare is a right. Number two, to answer the question, they publicly fund it. We fund public schools in a variety of ways in this country. Other countries fund their healthcare systems in a variety of ways. Obviously, to my mind, at a time when the gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider, when 95% of all new income created in this country is going to the top 1%, I believe that we should fund not only health care, but other aspects of government in as progressive and fair way as possible.
The FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, said today that it wants to put into effect regulations that would eliminate trans fats. What do you think of that? Do you think that can actually happen?
I think it's probably a good idea. I mean, one of the things that we are conscious of as a nation is, and I see this in Vermont every day, we have, you know, kind of had a mini revolution in Vermont in terms of our respect for food, where that food comes from and what we're eating. What I could tell you, Mark, as a member of the Health Education Committee, obesity in this country is a huge crisis. It leads to us spending hundreds of billions of dollars on caring for people with diabetes and a variety of other illnesses. I think in recent years we have made some progress in that area. And I think you're seeing in Vermont, if you go out on a Saturday, in many parts of the state, a whole lot of people going to farmers markets, people are getting their food through CSAs. And I think there's a consciousness that people want good quality food, they want it locally grown, and if possible, they want it organic.
We just got an email on topic, same topic. Dear Senator Sanders, a recent article in the Valley News reported that while the huge fast food companies continue to earn billions, the U.S. is supplementing their pay by providing earned income credits, food stamps, and Medicaid. Who's going to do anything to alleviate the middle class crunch?
Well, that is a very good issue. We just spent 2 hours at a meeting on that issue today. Here's what I think the caller is referring to. One of the economic crises facing America and why the middle class is disappearing and why we have more people living in poverty today at 46.5 million than we've ever had in the history of this country is that most of the new jobs, Mark, that are being created are low-wage jobs, and they're often part-time jobs. Right now, nationally, we have a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. In Vermont, it's $8.60 an hour. The truth is that the minimum wage has not kept pace with inflation for many, many years. So in terms of inflation dollars, people are really, minimum wage workers are earning less. I am helping to lead the fight, along with Senator Harkin of Iowa and others, to raise the minimum wage to at least $10.10 an hour. Now, what's happening right now, I'll give you just one outrageous example of what low wages in this country mean. You have the Walton family that owns Walmart. Everybody knows Walmart. The Walton family happens to be the wealthiest family in the United States. They're worth about $100 billion, which is more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people combined. Phenomenally wealthy. Meanwhile, they are paying workers in Walmart all across the country $8 an hour, $9 an hour, maybe less. They don't provide good benefits at all. So what you have is thousands of tens of thousands of Walmart employees have to go on food stamps to supplement their income. They have to go on Medicaid. Some of them live in federally subsidized housing. In other words, the federal government is subsidizing the low wages that Walmart employees are being paid, while the Walton family that owns Walmart becomes the wealthiest family in this country. That, to me, is absurd. If somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not have to live in poverty, and that is happening all over this country. That is why we have to raise the minimum wage. That is why we have to create millions of decent paying jobs in this country. You know, just to change subjects a bit, Mark, I am on the Budget Committee, which is now in this conference trying to deal with how we prevent another government shutdown, how we deal with sequestration, how we develop a long-term sensible budget. And what I will tell you, and what every poll in this country tells us, is the most important issue that people are concerned about is the collapse of the middle class, high unemployment. Real unemployment today is close to 14%, youth unemployment close to 20%, and what the American people are saying, we need millions of decent paying jobs. We need to make sure that our kids can, when they leave school, go out and have a career. So one of the things that I am fighting for as a member of this Budget Committee is to invest in our infrastructure, our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, bridges, rail, and creating the jobs that we need, moving toward energy efficiency in Vermont and around this country, so people are not paying more for their fuel bills than they should, and we're not emitting more greenhouse gas emissions and contributing to global warming more than we should. So to answer the question, we need to raise the minimum wage. We need to create jobs. I have serious concerns about our trade policies, which are resulting in jobs leaving the United States, going to China. There's a lot to be worked on.
We're going to augment what your answer there. We have some videotape of a budget conference that you were speaking to just recently, and we'll see what some of those priorities that you heard from the American public again, and we'll come back and talk about it a little bit more.
In every poll that I have seen, you know what the top issue is? It is the economy and it is jobs. Representative Black made a good point. Real unemployment in this country is not 7.4%. It is close to 14% if you include those people who have given up looking for work and are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Youth unemployment, and the Pope, by the way, new Pope talks about this a lot. Youth unemployment is close to 20%. African-American youth unemployment is over 40%. And you know what the American people tell us in polls? They say invest in the economy, create the millions of jobs that we need. Use government funds to rebuild our infrastructure. That is what the American people are telling us.
Senator, there was an effort out in Washington.
Mark, I just want to tell you, I agree with that guy.
I'm sure you do. And you know what?
He hit the nail right on the head.
And it's uncanny. You two sound just exactly the same. You don't support the effort out in Washington State, the livable wage at $15 an hour?
Look, I mean, that would be a great ideal. And I know there was a community that voted for that. Right now, I would be very, very happy if we could raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching Report from Washington. Tonight, our guest is Senator Bernie Sanders. We'd love to hear from you tonight. You can join us on the phone at 1-866-424-LIVE, or you can also send us an email at connect@vpt.org. In fact, we got an email from Kenneth Ely, who doesn't feel as though you specifically answered the earlier drone question, Senator. Wants to know your position on the use of drones in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
I think in some cases they have been used in a counterproductive way. There is no question that innocent people have been killed. They have been used in a reckless way. And when that happens, when innocent people are killed, it just makes more and more anti-Americanism. On the other hand, if the question is, do I think that under no circumstances should a drone be used, that is not my position. I think there are times when drones should be used.
You spoke a few moments ago about inequality in America. There was a report that came out today that said half of all American children will at some point during their childhood reside in a household that uses food stamps for a period of time. Surprise you?
No. I mean, it is just terribly tragic and terribly sad to see what's going on, especially with our kids. I mentioned youth unemployment being very high. 22% of our children are living in poverty. That is the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world. We're higher than any of our allies. 1 in 4 kids in this country, their families are on food stamps. Mark, what that is part of is a larger picture that I have to tell you not a whole lot of people talk about. I do. I wish I heard more discussion about it on the media and in Congress. And that is, in many ways, and I say this with great sadness, the United States of America is moving toward an oligarchic form of government in which a handful of billionaires are getting wealthier and wealthier, while the middle class is disappearing. Median family income today is $5,000 less than it was in 1999, and poverty is higher. So what you're looking at is a nation where a few people on top are doing phenomenally well. As I think I mentioned earlier, 95% of all new income created in America goes to the top 1%. So you're seeing a growth in millionaires and billionaires and a growth in childhood poverty and the collapse of the middle class. Is that the nation that we really want to be in? I don't think so. And that is why, and then on top of all of that, these guys who have all this money, the Koch brothers and others, they're investing that money because of Citizens United into politics. So the rich they could spend hundreds of millions of dollars electing candidates they support. So a smaller and smaller number of people control the economy, and they control the political life of this nation. And that is not where I think we want to be as a great country.
A caller earlier suggested that you should run for president. I know you gave an interview. You said you were 99% sure you were not going to run, which of course leaves people like me saying he's left the door open. But seriously, why not? Why not just run? You wouldn't have to. Your seat wouldn't be in jeopardy. Why not run and get these ideas out there?
Well, that is the appealing aspect of it. What I believe is there are not a whole lot of people in public life, senators, members of the House, who are talking about issues that working class families feel very strongly about. There is profound disgust with what's happening in Washington. People are angry and upset what's going on in the economy, middle class declining, rich getting richer. And people want to hear somebody talking about these problems and coming up with ideas. So that is the 1% aspect, which makes me think that maybe it might be a good thing to do. Somebody who's got to talk about these issues. On the other hand, realistically, I'm not going to raise the zillions of dollars from corporate America and the billionaires that you need nowadays to run a serious national campaign. And but I am leaving that window open. We will see what happens. But what I believe, Mark, is people are just giving up on the political process. Many people believe the Republican Party has become just extremely right-wing, and many people are disappointed that the Democrats have not been stronger in standing up for working families. So a whole lot of people are frustrated. I should tell you something interesting. A couple of weeks ago, just as part of this whole discussion, I went to Mississippi Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. We did a lot of, 5 public meetings in those states, and very good turnout. And what I found there is you got a lot of decent people who, are just really unhappy about what's going on in their states. Many of these states, their governors have denied Medicaid to the expansion of Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act to their people. Poverty is, we have problems in Vermont. Problems there economically are much worse, and people want to see some progressive voices out there. So we'll see.
Appealing, a good thing to do, leaving the window open. So you're really not fooling around here.
Look, Mark, this country faces enormous problems, and I've just outlined what some of them are. We need voices to stand up for working families, so the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week, who are worried about, what's going to happen to their kids, people who can't afford college, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the political process. So, I think it's a long shot, but I haven't closed the door of my running.
And you wouldn't have to raise billions and billions. You've got the platform of being a United States Senator.
Well, Mark, when you have my views, that platform is not quite as wide as it is for people like Chris Christie or Rand Paul. The networks do not clamor to have me on their shows. My point of view is not what corporate America really particularly wants to hear. But, on the other hand, you got a whole lot of folks out there who are supportive.
Let's take a call from Newport. Thomas, good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening, Senator, and thank you for your time. I'm actually calling, my concern is with the food stamp program. On average, families are getting, $30+ a month that is being cut from their benefits. My question is, with highest unemployment rates in the country at this time, why are we cutting the most vulnerable people in the country? This is just not right.
You're absolutely correct. It is not right, and it's not that we are cutting it. Let me tell you what's going on. And let me just be very clear. The most important development in modern American politics is that we have a Republican Party which has moved to become not the kind of center-right party or moderate conservative party it used to be, but a right-wing extremist party. And these are the guys who shut down the government and almost didn't pay our bills. And what I will tell the caller is these guys passed a bill in the House of Representatives that would cut $40 billion of food stamps over the next 10 years. And the caller is absolutely right. We have more people living in poverty than ever before, significant numbers of people unemployed. You don't balance the budget on the backs of children and the elderly, and you don't cut back on food programs that people desperately need. But what you have there, and this is an important point to make, I know not everybody agrees with me, but in my view, you have this right-wing extremist party funded by people like the Koch brothers, and their vision of what the government should be in years to come is radically different than the kind of America we have today. Not only do they want to decimate the food stamp program, these guys want to end Social Security as we know it. They want to end Social Security, not tomorrow, but over a period of time. They want to privatize it. These guys want to end Medicare as we know it and convert it into a voucher program. They want to make massive cuts in Medicaid. These people are so extreme, Mark, and I think people will shake their heads and say, Bernie's not telling the truth. I am telling the truth. We're fighting now to try to raise the minimum wage. You have a majority of Republicans who not only will not vote to raise the minimum wage, they do not believe in the concept of the minimum wage. They do not think the government should be involved in maintaining at least a floor on wages. And their view is that if there's a high unemployment area in this country where large numbers of people have no work, and an employer says, look, I'm going to hire you for $3 an hour. That's fine. That's okay. That's their view. So what you have, to get back to the caller's question, these guys want to make massive cuts in food stamps and in you name the program that protects working families, the middle class, cutbacks in Pell Grants, cutbacks in education, cutbacks in Head Start. They want to either eliminate or significantly cut virtually every piece of major legislation passed in the last 80 years, which provides security and help to working families.
Speaking of Social Security, you recently spoke about some of the challenges that seniors have and some of their costs and how in some cases they're much higher than the rate of inflation. We're going to run a short clip of that and then we'll come back and have you agree with that guy again.
What are they buying? They're buying medicine. They're buying health care. If they live in Vermont, they're going to have to heat their homes. And probably they're buying food, I suspect. If you look at what the purchasing needs are of seniors, for a variety of reasons, they are higher than the general inflation rate. So what we should be moving toward, and Senator Harkin and I and Rosa are going to work on this issue, is in fact creating a new formulation, not which cuts Social Security, but one which provides more benefits to seniors.
Uncanny, both of you wearing the same tie, too. One question that came in as an email from Hunter Park in South Burlington, who asks, you recently said Social Security is not going broke, but shouldn't seniors give something back to guarantee that the system survives?
Well, what I would say to Hunter, well, let me just deal with the issue that I spoke about, and then I'll deal with Hunter's question. There is a significant effort now, led by people like Pete Peterson, who's a Wall Street billionaire, the Koch brothers and others, who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to get Congress to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, but Social Security mostly. And they've come up with this concept. It's called the chained CPI, which probably 8 people in the world outside of Capitol Hill have heard of. But what that suggests is that whenever I tell seniors this, they usually start laughing. The argument of the so-called chained CPI is that the COLAs, the cost of living adjustments that seniors get on Social Security is too generous. It is too generous, and it has to be made stingier. We have to cut back on our COLAs. It was just announced last week that the COLA for this year is going to be 1.5%. And the advocates, I presume, of the chained CPI think that is too generous. The result, if the chained CPI were to be implemented today, it would mean that if you're 65, by the time you're 75, you get about $650 a year less in Social Security benefits. When you're 85, it's $1,000 a year. And if you are a disabled veteran and your disability occurred when you were young, we're talking about cuts of tens of thousands of dollars in your lifetime. To me, that is absolutely unacceptable. So here's the story about Social Security. When you turn on Fox TV or someplace else, and your guys, they think Social Security is going broke, it just is not true. It's not Bernie Sanders. It is the Social Security Administration that says Social Security, as a $2.8 trillion surplus, can pay every benefit for the next 20 years. That is not going broke. Now, what I believe we should do, and what the thrust of my remarks was, is that you do a couple of things. Number one, seniors' purchasing habits are different than 18-year-old kids. So if you're an 18-year-old and you're buying a computer game, or your parents are buying a flat-screen TV, in many ways those costs are going down. But if you're a senior, you're not buying an iPad or a flat-screen TV. Mostly what you're spending your money is on healthcare, prescription drugs, heating, food, very basic necessities. In many ways, the costs that seniors incur are higher than the general population because they surround healthcare, which until recently at least has been going up a lot faster than general inflation. So what I am fighting for with others is a new index which honestly reflects what seniors are spending. And if you do that, their COLAs will be greater, larger than they are now, and certainly very much greater than the so-called chained CPI. Now, in terms of Hunter's question, shouldn't seniors be contributing? The answer is they have. Social Security is an earned income benefit. Today, every worker in the state of Vermont is contributing 6.2% of his or her salary into the Social Security Trust Fund, and their employers are contributing the same. That's why we have a $2.8 trillion surplus. Now, what I think the solution, the long-term solution to Social Security solvency, in the sense of making it strong not just for 20 years, but for 50 years, is to lift the cap on taxable income so that you do away with the absurdity of somebody making $1 million contributing the same amount into Social Security as somebody making $113,000, which is the case today. And you don't even have to start at $114,000. Obama, when he ran for president in 2008, thought that we should have a bubble up to $250, then you lift the cap. You do that, Mark, Social Security is solvent for 50 or 60 years.
We have an email from Gregory who says, I support your policies, Senator, and want to see them continue after you leave office. Are you doing anything organizationally to have your ideas continue after that?
Thank you very much. And, you know, we have a lot of good young people in the state of Vermont and young officials. And, you know, I am proud of the fact that in many respects, Vermont is one of the most progressive states in the country. As I said earlier, I hope we'll lead the country in terms of single payer. But we got a lot of good young people who are there to carry on the fight.
Mark Kizak asks a question on mental health and guns. He says, Mr. Sanders, first of all, as a recreational sportsman and hunter, I appreciate your stance on gun control. And while I think we both agree the views of some senators are misguided on gun issues, what is to be done to address the mental health policies of the United States so that real change can be realized without Big Brother going on a gun collection spree at my next doctor's appointment?
This caller touches on a very, very sensitive issue, and it is a huge issue. Mark, what I can tell you, and I can tell the caller, is we get calls in our office, and I'm sure other members of the Senate and House get the same calls, from people who say, you know, I am worried about my husband, I'm worried about my brother, I fear very much he's going to do something to hurt other people, maybe hurt himself. We've desperately tried to get him help, and we can't find help that we can afford. So we have a real crisis in terms of access to mental health. One of the reasons that I am strongly supportive of community health centers is that every community center, by law, has got to provide mental health counseling, but we've got to go a lot further than that. To answer the caller's question, I mean, here in Washington, D.C., we saw a couple of months ago at the Navy Yard, some guy going into the Navy Yard, shooting up, killing people, and we're seeing this, you know, too often all over this country. You have, I would imagine, thousands and thousands of people walking the streets of this country who have homicidal, you know, impulses, you know, God, or they think God is telling them something, voices are telling them something, suicidal impulses, and they have access to very powerful weapons. It is a very frightening situation, and you know, I am a strong advocate of increasing mental health capabilities. I want everybody in this country who is, you know, has serious problems to know that there is a place that they can go and get the care that they need. And we're working on that within the Veterans Administration as well, because their problem is compounded with PTSD and TBI and everything else. So we've hired just a whole lot of mental health counselors, but it is a serious problem, and it's one that we have to address.
And is gun control, for all intents and purposes, off the table in Washington?
I think right now it is, yes.
And is that a demonstration of the power of the National Rifle Association?
Yes, it is.
What does that say to you as somebody who's fought against special interests most of your career?
Well, it says that the NRA is a very effective organization in mobilizing its members and telling often really dishonest statements about, you know, there are probably millions of people in this country who think that Barack Obama wants to take away every gun in America, et cetera, et cetera. The NRA is very powerful, and they wield a lot of power within the Republican Party, within some Democrats as well. So, you know, in Vermont, we have virtually no gun control at all. Thank God, you know, we have a lower crime rate than most states. I'm not, you know, but I think, you know, apropos of the last call, at the very least, we should do effective background checks. I mean, I hope that there are not too many people in this country who think that folks with severe mental problems should have access to powerful weapons.
Brian Perry asks in an email, we just dodged a financial disaster, and it seems that everyone in Washington is pointing fingers and patting themselves on the back. Is there anyone there currently working on a real budget for our nation? And he concludes saying that you're the greatest.
Well, thank you very much. And I am very fortunate to be on the Budget Committee, and we just met this morning. Some of us met this morning. And let me just say a few words on this. Here's what I am fighting for, and I think it really represents what most people around the country believe is right. First of all, I will oppose cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid because in these very difficult economic times, you don't balance the budget on the backs of the weak and the vulnerable and the kids and the elderly. Number two, when the gap between the very wealthy and everybody else is growing wider, when you have in this country today 1 out of 4 corporations in America not paying any federal income taxes, when the corporate collectively, when the corporate tax contribution to the Treasury is substantially less than it used to be, when we are losing $100 billion every year because corporate America is stashing their money in tax havens in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, there are ways to bring in revenue in this country which are fair and which will not impact, the vast majority of the people. So what I am fighting for is a budget which protects the middle class, working families, the children, and the elderly, but frankly, which does ask the wealthiest people, which asks Wall Street, which asks corporate America, which is enjoying record-breaking profits, to start paying their fair share of taxes. I'm also think there is waste in government. I'm not going to argue with my conservative friends and make that point. Among other things, you got a Department of Defense today that can't even do an audit. Huge overruns. I think we do not have to spend almost as much as the rest of the world combined on defense. I think we can make sensible defense cuts, which still will allow us to be the strongest military in the world. So I think there, and in other agencies, I think there's waste and duplication as well. So I think a combination of judicious cuts, asking the wealthy and large corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes, investing in our economy, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, creating jobs. If you create jobs, people become taxpayers. That helps us with the deficit. The last point that I would make on that, Mark, is that, as I hope many Vermonters remember, when Bill Clinton left office in 2001, this country was running a $236 billion surplus. And the economists were telling us that surplus was going to grow and grow and grow. And what happened during the Bush years? We went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, didn't pay for that war, gave huge tax breaks to the richest people in this country, no offset. And then you had the Wall Street crash of 2008, massive unemployment, small businesses folding, less revenue coming in. So I think if that's the history of how we got to where we are right now, it tells me that you don't balance the budget on people who had nothing to do with growing that deficit. And there are ways to do deficit reduction and job creation that are fair.
We go to Arlington. Joe, good evening. We got to be quick. You have a question for the senator.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I would like to know when the American taxpayer will be able to stop paying for free health care for the 28 million Iraqis. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Well, I think what the caller is referring to is that the United States has been not only spent huge amounts of money. By the way, the war in Iraq is anticipated to cost between $3 and $6 trillion. That's a war that the entire Vermont delegation voted against, and I think history will record that as the right vote. But I think what the caller is talking about, not only do we spend money on defense and on the military, we also involved in rebuilding Iraq's and Afghanistan's infrastructure. Some people think it might be a better idea to rebuild America's infrastructure and put American workers back to work.
Bernie, I know you're not the biggest sports fan in the world, but I'm curious to know, the Washington Redskins football team, do you think they ought to change their name?
I don't know. It's not an issue I've spent a whole lot of time on. If I had to vote on it, I would say probably yes. I think you're insulting a segment of America. But again, not probably the major issue facing the American people.
Today, the Senate voted in favor of ending discrimination against gays in the workplace. Why? Why did you vote in favor of that?
Well, I strongly voted in favor of that. Look, we have, economically, this country is doing pretty badly, no question about that. But on other areas, we have made some good progress. Mark, this country has come a long way in ending discrimination against African Americans. We have come a long way in opening up opportunities and ending discrimination against women. We still have a long way to go. But today there are 20 women in the United States Senate and many in the House, and those numbers are only going to grow in years to come. So we've made progress in fighting for the rights of women. And in recent years, we have made progress in fighting for gay rights. And I think what more and more Americans understand, and I suspect a strong majority in Vermont, is that you can't discriminate against somebody just based on the person that he or she loves. And I think this was a step forward. Vermont has been a leader, as you know, in terms of gay rights and gay marriage. And I think what passed today is a step forward in reflecting Vermont's values.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Bernie. We appreciate it very much. We'll put your contact information up on the screen, and thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us tonight on the program, and we encourage you to watch Vermont This Week tomorrow night at 7:30 to get the latest Vermont news. For all of us here at VPT, I'm Mark Johnson. Have a great night.